Welcome back into halftime on a Wednesday. Phil Elson, Matt Smackdown Jenkins, Matty T, and Clay Henry, the publisher, editor, Hawgs Illustrated. You can always read him in Whole Hog Sports. He's on the Morning Rush 2 times a week. He's with us on Wednesdays. Clay, football practice, huh? What did it feel like to actually be able to go watch a football practice? When was the last time you'd actually done that?
Well, we got to see some in, was that early September or whatever? I mean, we got to see portions of them, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. But that's the longest I've seen a football practice probably since maybe a spring practice under Chad Morris. So it's been a while. And it was almost an hour. I mean, I think Tom Murphy timed it at 50 minutes. And, I mean, we were out there maybe a little before they got, really started. So I say I was out there an hour. And I walked slow. I was on the far side of the field, so I walked slower than everybody else to take my time getting, nobody's going to yell at me, go faster, Clay, go faster. So I probably stayed out there a hair longer. So,
well, what'd you get to see yesterday, man? I mean, what were they doing?
Well, so I'm going to kind of paint the picture. That's what Chuck Barrett always said when I do practice, Clay, paint the picture. So they have roughly about 24 X's with numbers on them along the end lines of the two fields, and just a few on the sideline, maybe up to like the 15. And you have to pick where you want to be, and then you stand on that X. And so I picked an area on the grass field next to the goalpost where the defensive line sleds and posts, they have posts with pads on them, and all of the stuff that the defensive line coaches, pads or bags, all that. So I wanted to see Jermail Ashley, the new defensive line coach, at work. So that put me a long way from the middle of the field, which is where, the offense and defense was doing their team segment. So I was probably 70 yards from that. But I didn't see things. But among what I noticed with the defensive line is he's bigger than all of his players. He's 6'6", 275, 290, and he's bigger than all of his guys. So that's not a good sign. You want your players to be bigger than your coach, right? I mean, he was an all Big 12 or Big 8, whenever it was then, defensive tackle at Kansas, and was really a great college player. And he's, he looks the part. You could put him in pads right now and, go to battle with him. Jalen Williams, and this is a different Jalen Williams, spelled differently than the basketball players.
Alen, right?
Yep, and he's the real deal. He looks like Jonathan Marshall. I mean, he's thick in the legs. Maybe not quite as thick as Jonathan was, but he's he'll be on the first team and be my guess. The junior college player. And then Eric Gregory is thicker. But what I saw was detail and technique, and he's changing technique a little bit, the way they step, and was working a little bit on burst with the sleds and things like that. But he knows what he's doing. He's top end coach, and I know that they were really pleased to hire him, and so. They're going to do different things with the defensive line. They're going to spread the ends out wider, which will, cause some trouble in the run game, but it's going to help them in the, as far as pass rush. It's, guys like Dorian Gerald, Eric Gregory, that's going to help them, as far as widen out maybe one side to the open side of the field. I really liked what I saw of Trent Gordon, watched the defensive backs, and, I'm enthralled by watching Jalen Catalon, and he looks like Popeye. I mean, his arms were just. I mean, he obviously has had a good winter working out with upper body. Simeon Blair looks like the real deal, and he moves around really well. I think there's safeties with those guys, and then Trent Gordon. You could probably play him at nickel. You could play him at corner.
Is Gordon the guy who transferred from Penn State?
Yeah, Penn State transfer. Yeah, and he's got the body and the physical stature.
Is he allowed to
be an
play
SEC
next season?
safety?
Do you know?
Yeah,
if
he
he'll
played
be eligible?
corner. I'm sorry.
Do you know if he'll be eligible next
Oh
season?
yeah, I mean he's eligible. Yeah.
Okay, good.
And I mean all the they're going to pass something that makes all the players eligible. If they were academically eligible when they left their school, they will be eligible to play immediately. That's just what they're going to do for COVID. And there's so many weird things about COVID in the rules, and obviously there's 10 seniors that are coming back for an extra year because of COVID. So it's if you can imagine some way to take advantage of COVID right now, the NCAA will like, sure, we'll do that. I mean, it's like they're not going to be mean to players right now. They're just not.
Clay, let me stay on the defensive side here with you briefly, because I think you touched on where my main area of concern and I wonder if you think that there can be improvement in the pass rush. Like, you expect the secondary is talented. They're probably going to improve upon last year. You get your 2 starting linebackers back, and they were pretty good last season. You lose Jonathan Marshall. You lose Julius Coates. You already didn't have a great pass rush to begin with, and I feel like, man, that's one area where you really need improvement.
Yeah, what you saw last year, you're right, and that's the emphasis. And they're going to blitz more. They're going to do things to stunt more, movement up front. They're going to do some things that really help their players scheme-wise. And they kept it simple last year, and it was almost like they tried not to rush the passer, that they wanted to contain quarterback runs and drop 8 into coverage, and it looked like that's what they did. And they're gonna push the envelope a little bit, and it might, lessen their ability to stop the run a little bit. Like they just tried to eliminate big plays. Let's just keep it all in front of us, and we'll tackle you. And if you're patient, and go down the field. But we're going to try to, drop guys and intercept a few passes. And early they did that, but as the season went along, those interceptions dropped off as teams realized, okay, we can just stay underneath and we'll be fine. Just don't throw it down the field. Alabama didn't throw it down the field at all against them. They just took everything underneath and had these, and what happened is their time of possession was out of whack because of that. Offenses kept the ball against their defense, and then Arkansas would play hurry up. So I think they're going to try to get off the field a little quicker. It might mean they give up more big plays. And they've got to play better, tighter man coverage on the outside and not just drop 8. Does that make sense?
It does. And what it sounds like you're saying, it's like we're like Barry Odom and Coach Pitt feel ready to expand things that they would like to do with this defense. It sounds like they tried to be, from what you're saying, just very basic. Stay in front of us,
see what
we will
happened
tackle.
is, and you're right. And the reason why you do that is you didn't have a spring practice. You couldn't implement anything. You didn't, you went through August. Okay, you can't scrimmage. We're just going to let you guys be out there a little bit, because of COVID. You can't be in meetings sitting side by side. It was so weird last year. And so you just made things simple. And let's just compete. Let's just play hard. And that's what they did. Now you've got to keep that, the intensity and competitive spirit that you saw return to the Razorbacks. And then, add a little more jazz to it, I guess, as far as the schemes.
A little more jazziness in your defense. I think that's a good way to put it too. All right. So how often are you allowed to go to practice?
Well, I don't know that, and they haven't said. I think it's let's see. And we were asked, okay, let's don't go with the play-by-play of what happens in practice, and let's don't list 5 deep on the depth chart. Let's go watch, and you get a feel for it. And we got to watch a little bit more, and that's really, they don't want the media coming to practice and laying out to the opposition exactly what's going on. Does that makes any sense? So you can watch practice, but it's going to be, you're going to get background and feel. We don't want you reporting that. So we'll see. Some may do it, some may not.
All right, stay with us. Clay will be back with us in the next segment. We'll go into a little basketball, some baseball too. And don't forget that if you own a business that you're looking to get more secure or just look a little bit nicer, get a hold of the Fence Man because they've got a fence that can help with both of those things. They help you out with custom installations, gates, controlled access card readers, many more sort of installations like that. They've been doing it over 40 years. That's the Fence Man, 479-782-3936. The Fence Man is a division of Quantum Property Services. Clay Henry's with us in the next segment. We're right back. Clay Henry's with us here for the last segment, first hour. Then we get the meat hooks. Fired up about that. We'll touch on one more piece of football here, move over to the other things after. Clay, you'd written about KJ Jefferson being the clear leader at quarterback heading into spring. Is there a real quarterback competition here? I've read so many good things about Malik Hornsby, about Lucas Coley. I know he showed up on campus too. Is this a real quarterback battle, or is this just really an anointing of KJ, or is that what they're hoping for, an anointing of him?
Good question. And I think Jefferson is the guy. I mean, he could default. I mean, he could have a bad spring, but I don't think he is. I mean, I think he's going to have – I mean, what I saw yesterday, he was accurate on the short passes. He can throw the deep ball. You know, he's a terrific runner. I mean, you know, he's got tailback size, 230, whatever it is. And he's he's a beast. But the real deal is, I mean, they're going to run him a lot, so he'll get banged up. So, who's the second quarterback? And I think my thought was it's Hornsby, right? And then I saw Coley yesterday, and Coley looks like a tailback. I mean, he's bigger than Hornsby, and he's got a good arm. And he did not look overwhelmed for the first day. Now, as they move forward and do more and more, he might be overwhelmed. That'll be the question. But it wasn't that way yesterday. And I know they really liked him. And, he's off the charts intangibles from what I've read from his high school coach. And I don't think there's been any disappointment with him. And Sam Pittman made a point to say he had really worked hard, in January, February, in the early March in their off season, and had impressed everybody with his work ethic. And, that doesn't mean he's ready to play, but I think he's the real deal.
Clay Henry, the publisher of Hawgs Illustrated, joining us here on Halftime. Clay, let's go over to the hardwood. Let's talk a little bit about this Arkansas basketball team, and they tip off this Friday, 6 o'clock p.m. against either Georgia or Missouri. Clay, we were tossing around the idea earlier of how well this team is playing. We've talked extensively about that for the past few weeks. But as you get into tournament season, now is when you really need to buckle down and not show any flaws. So in the spirit of that, is there an area of this basketball team that they could improve on even more?
Yeah, I think that you want to tighten down your defense. That's how you go far in tournament play. They seem to be shooting it well, as far as the threes and everything. That their offense, but I keep every once in a while you see a defensive breakdown, and I think that's where they want to just continue to polish and be better on the pick and rolls. So yeah, that kind of stuff, and then just eliminate turnovers but I don't think there's this is a team that is kind of hitting on all cylinders. And you worry about, okay, when is Jalen Williams going to be back? And may not be in this tournament, it might be the next tournament. So that's the worry, that what kind of depth that you have for you're going to have to get some more out of some of the big guys if he can't play in the SEC tournament, and that seems to be more in doubt.
Let's elaborate a little bit more on Jalen Williams. And obviously nothing's been announced from Coach Musselman about Jalen Williams' status. We've heard rumblings and rumors that he may not be available. We heard Tommy mention that this morning. Let's go, for the sake of this question, let's just assume that he's out for the whole entire SEC tournament. What changes in your mind about this team? Can this team still get to a Sunday championship game, or is the depth too much to overcome?
Well, other teams are having to face depth problems too. It's what do they call it? All-day sucker. I mean, that's from an old perspective, that was what we used to say. When there was going to be depth issues for every team, but they've got a bench that can score off the bench. They bring guys in, obviously Noche, but Desi Sills and Vance Jackson can score. So they've got some pieces. So I don't think that they're void as far as depth. Now, they don't like to play more than 6, but that's because they don't have to. You're probably going to have to get something out of Ethan Henderson, and that's been iffy. So, but yeah, I think they can. They're so talented and they're playing so well. I think that they can handle something like that. And if they get in a situation where they punish somebody in one of these games, and then they can rest some guys, well, then that changes things a little bit.
Absolutely, that's a good way to look at it. And you mentioned playing so well right now, and this team, I don't know if they can say they've been playing with a chip on their shoulder, but they're playing like a championship team. And then you factor in how the SEC awards came out Monday, and obviously, congratulations to Moses Moody and J.D. Notte for their awards, but no Justin Smith, no Devo Davis, no recognition for them. And we saw a very sound like an irritated Coach Musselman yesterday during his press conference. So I guess for you, or for what I'm going to ask you here, how much can you add more motivation to this team? Do you think they'll use this as fuel to the fire, or does this team have enough to play for right now?
Yeah, I think coaches are really good at this time of year grabbing for some, the respect card. Nolan did it, and it was. I'll never forget, when Billy Packard, talked about Duke winning and saying, the smarter team. But boy, that was just like gasoline on the fire. Nolan latched hold of that, and so I mean, yeah, the respect card is real and it's justified. And Justin Smith, the thing that I look at, those are really talented LSU players, but I'm not sure all of those guys deserve to be on that team. And you could take one of those guys off in the way Justin Smith played in the last 10 or 11 games, and you can make a case that he's the best player in the league, and he's not. I'm not saying he should have won it over, say, Moses, but you can make that case. And it was really unfortunate and sad that he's not somewhere on one of those teams. Yeah.
One thing I'm interested to see here is, Musk comes from professional basketball. He talks about that and how his style of coaching is a little different than most college coaches, and part of it is the day-to-day nature or every other day sort of nature of professional basketball. That's what you're playing now. If you're going to win this tournament in the SEC, you're winning 3 in 3 days. You go deep in the NCAA tournament, you win 2 games in 3 days. Do you feel, and I know he didn't have a lot of success at Nevada in the tournament, but there's something about the way he's prepared this team. I think he's really good at preparing teams, motivating teams. I feel like month should be a month that Musk can kind of like make his own.
Yeah, and I think tournaments are just different. I mean, it's some teams excel in that what you would call the tight window of the turnaround, and then some don't. And it's different. And there are teams that they get hot, and it's like. Well, you think, you can't play 4 days in a row. You can't play 3 days in a row. But then some do it, and they look great. And you think, they didn't look tired at all at any point. And I think some of it, Phil, is a mindset. And you tell them it's really hard to do, and it's really hard to do. And you tell them, no, it's not hard to do. We can play 38 minutes. In NBA, they play 82 games, and then they play postseason. So, it's like, how many minutes do the great players play? Well, they play a lot. And I think some of it is what your mind is programmed to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's what he's doing right now with the NBA talk is, you can do this.
Here, before we get to the top of the hour, I want to get a quick thought on baseball for you. The team goes on the road to Louisiana Tech. That's a good team. They're not going to go undefeated this year. I think we all expect that. 2 out of 3 on the road this weekend is just fine, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, anytime you go on the road and you win 2 out of 3, and they're the hunted, they've got a target, and it'll be a raucous crowd, and this is their shot at number 1, and this is Louisiana Tech Super Bowl, and Arkansas had their hands full. They'll have their hands full down there, and they did the last time they were there. I think they lost one, and then we're way behind in the second, and the wind's blowing out 30, and they started hitting some home runs and made a comeback. But Dave loves to take his team on the road early and find out what the makeup is, and so that they're not finding it out. Okay, how do you travel? How do you do these things? So that's what this is about.
Yeah. Yeah, and the last two times that they've played Louisiana Tech, they've lost a game in the series, won 2 out of 3 a couple of years ago, and split a series in the midweek. Even though they've played Louisiana Tech in 2 series the last 3 years, I've never seen Louisiana Tech play baseball because I've always been with the basketball team, so this will feel a little bit different for me. And Clay, I'm looking forward to talking about it with you next week because we'll have also a Tuesday game against Oklahoma at home that we could review on this show too. So I always love talking sports with you, but there's something about talking baseball with you.
Love baseball. I do. I mean, I grew up at Ray Winder, and that kind of predates your traveler time, but it's we have fun sharing some of those stories off the air.
Yes, some of those are only made for off the air too, as minor league baseball.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, Clay, thanks a lot, man. Have a great week.
Thanks, Clay.
Thanks, guys. Always enjoy it.
You got it. That's Clay Henry. If you missed any of our talk with Clay, make sure you download the latest edition of the Eastside Liquor Halftime Podcast. It's right there on the Hit That Line Podcast Network, where you find all of our best online content from the Morning Rush, Halftime, Ruskin and Jack, Hog Talk, Trust in the Process, and Primetime Preps. If you just search hitthatline.com wherever you listen to podcasts, you'll find it right there. It's made possible by Breeden RV Center, a no-pressure, laid-back atmosphere, always home and free maintenance for life.